Welcome to VR Roundtable. This is a bonus episode of VR Roundtable. We're going to go ahead and call this episode 13.5. And basically what happened is we didn't get a chance to cover everything that we wanted to cover in the last episode. We missed out on a couple of big experiences. And then the other issue that we're dealing with is Gary is extremely busy right now with work and a lot of stuff. And it's very difficult for us to figure out good time frames where we can all be together and do this. So we've had a little bit of problems as far as that's gone. And so we're not sure exactly when our next episode is going to come. So we have a chance to do a little bonus episode here. And so me and Steve have gotten together and we decided we're going to do a special PlayStation VR episode. And what we're going to do in the beginning is we're going to kind of there's a couple of questions I have about PSVR, kind of the state of the union for PSVR and how PSVR is doing now that we are basically 60 days into the launch of this product. This is the first console virtual reality device. It's a pretty important device in mainstream electronics if virtual reality is going to take hold. PlayStation VR is a key product. So we're going to get into that on this episode. And we also have some PSVR games that we're going to talk about as well. So definitely stay tuned for that. If you're really into Oculus Rift and you're into the HTC Vive, we will have episode 14 coming soon, and Gary will be on that episode, and we'll be covering everything there. This one is going to be PSVR, and it's because me and Steve are all in right now on PSVR. And Gary doesn't have one. So, I mean, he can comment to a degree, but since me and Steve are together for this episode, we might as well bang it out and do a big PSVR talk. Steve, how's it going on over there? I know it's pretty late.
It's going good. I was playing some games earlier.
Cool. Okay, so we do want to get into some of these topics. Now, the first topic that I have is I looked at the news stories that are out there, and there's not really a lot of big PlayStation VR news stories, but one of the news stories that is out there is there's a story about how PSVR is selling and that it's going to hit 800,000 units. And we also remember there was a Super Data report about a week ago where they revised the projections from 2.5 million headsets down to like 780,000 headsets, something like that. We've heard about this, but at the same time, if you're on Reddit, you constantly see posts of people saying, where can I buy this thing? You go to Target.com, you can't get them. You go to Amazon.com, you can't get them. You go to Best Buy, you can't get them. Where can you buy these things? So is it selling bad? Is it selling good? Is it an artificial shortage? I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities. What do you think, Steve, is going on right now from the fact that you can't really find this thing very well?
Well, it's hard to say what's going on exactly. We're not on the inside track with Sony, and I'm not sure how much they've come out to actually say. What we can do is evaluate the facts and what's known, and that is that, yeah, it's largely sold out. You hear rumorings every now and then that such and such big box retailer may be getting a shipment refresh between such and such days, but largely, if you're in the market for a PSVR right now, you have to work to obtain one. So that speaks well of itself, but you know, the recent article on wearable that you're referring, they kind of hinted at supply chain issues or, you know, supply constraints. So that could very well be true, or it could just be what Sony decided to produce and allocate. So until Sony themselves comes out and says, hey, we have a issue with production or an issue with supply, and that's why we're sold out everywhere, we'll just have to assume that they, you know, underestimated the demand for this. So, which is kind of maybe a minor concern, because they have known for months, before the PSVR came out, that the pre-orders were largely sold out. And, I mean, they've sold out, what, few hours or whatever it was on Amazon, or day or two. I don't remember the details. I got mine in early. So, yeah, regardless, I think Sony's wishing they had more on the shelf. So I think that's good for the industry as whole. But it's kind of bittersweet, because it would be in more homes, or would be utilized more on Christmas morning had they had more on the shelf.
So, I mean, if you look at it, obviously they don't have overwhelming supply. That's one thing that we know. They don't have an incredible number of them that they're selling like crazy, because we're not hearing stories that go down that road. But then we do hear so much that it's sold out a lot of places. I have to believe that either they really do have a component shortage and they have a problem in manufacturing these, and they simply cannot manufacture as many as they would like, or there's a slight possibility, although it's pretty remote, that it could be some type of artificially engineered shortage to try to make it the hot Christmas thing. Although if that was the strategy, it's almost like they're strangling the supply channel almost too much, because usually if you do that, you're still kind of trickling them along. Have you ever experienced an artificial shortage like that, where a company like is deliberately trying to make something scarce?
Oh, maybe I have to be careful. My own company, I don't know. No, I can't speak with any certainty. I'm kind of making a joke there. I don't think, I'm not an economist. I'm not, I don't have a financial degree. I'm just an engineer. From my experience, though, the only time I think that's kind of a well-known thing is maybe in the energy markets, oil speculations and stuff like that. So in a consumer electronics, and especially in a consumer electronic that's kind of a new frontier, I don't think the executives over at Sony were wanting to kind of roll those dice. So I'd have to say no.
Okay, the thing about an artificial shortage, though, is if they were doing that, what you would do is you would make it incredibly hard to get for a while. And then right before Christmas, like 7, 8 days before Christmas, bam, all the stores just have plenty of units. Anybody that wants one can get one. And I actually have seen this situation happen before in history. You go back to the launch of the Nintendo 64. This was in 1996. The Nintendo 64 came out in late September, but that Christmas, it was like the impossible to get item. And I remember it really well because I actually had an extra one and I was trying to sell it for a little extra money. It was like to try to buy some extra games and stuff. I know it's not a good thing to be a scalper, but I was much younger back in those days doing stupid stuff. And I couldn't, what happened was I had held on to it and I was going to try to sell it right before Christmas. And what happened was about 7 days before Christmas, you couldn't find a Nintendo 64 anywhere. You'd look everywhere, you couldn't find one. But about 7 days before Christmas, the stores were absolutely flooded with them. I mean, just tons of them. And they sold like hotcakes, because there was that pin-up demand for Christmas. This is a little bit different because this is a peripheral and you still need this whole other system to be able to even run it. So to think they would try to create that kind of demand is probably unlikely. So it probably is some type of component shortage. And it's really unfortunate because, like you said, they should be maximizing as many sales as they can possibly get this Christmas season. So that is a little unfortunate, but we can keep our eyes on this. And if there is a flood of units that come in all of a sudden right before Christmas, it's a little bit interesting.
Yeah, it would be interesting, but at the same time, if they have production issues, if they have component issues, they're probably scrambling and hauling ass to rectify that, and they could be pushing hard and putting pressure on their supply chains to meet a Christmas demand. So I don't think it proves or guarantees artificial choking of the supply, but I mean it's possible. Who knows what these companies do and decide. I have to think with the fact that it's somewhat unknown territory for them, that they wouldn't just take that risk, because they have a lot of startup costs riding on this, and they have to at least recoup that. And even if they did, and still the platform itself wasn't successful, then they're still losing on market share with Vive and Oculus and whatever comes next. Microsoft has kind of teased their involvement in their stuff. So I don't know, and I think we're mostly speculating, but it's good. It's good conversation, and it's frustrating a little bit, because we know that there are people excited for VR that aren't going to have it on Christmas morning.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get into our next topic, a little bit of a happier subject. We're now 60 days into PSVR. You jumped on the bandwagon right away. I jumped on the bandwagon maybe about a week late because I didn't have a PS4. But we've both been on this bandwagon pretty much from the get-go, and we're pretty much all in on this. We've only played so many games. I mean, we haven't played everything, but what is your feel, Steve, when you think about this batch of software that has been made available up until this point, 60 days in? I mean, I have my thoughts, but let's go to you first. What do you think about this current batch of software that we have?
Well, if we think of it as a console launch and compare it to, say, the launch of the PS4 and PS3 and so on, I think it's been very successful. 60 days in, and I'm not hungry for anything. Of course, I want more experiences, because it's a new novelty to me, just in the types of experiences. But they did a good job of making sure they had a pretty wide, diverse lineup, and they had plenty of software available from the get-go. So compared to most launches in the last 2 or 3 generations, I think they've stacked very, very well. The downside, and it's kind of where my concerns come in, and I know we briefly touched on it on a previous episode. I'm concerned not so much for now, but for what I think may be a lull in 2, 3, 4 months, something like that. So I hope they didn't front load it so much that they don't have enough to kind of keep the momentum going. The gaming industry as a whole has shown that, if we were to rewind 15 years, most of your big game releases come out in, November, whatever, in preparation of Christmas. And in the last, I feel like 5, 6, 7 years, maybe not even that long, you started to get major titles that would drop in February or April and things like that. So they've learned that gaming can be popular and can be very mainstream, and you can still sell a game, boatloads of shipments of a game in the non-holiday, quote unquote off season. So I hope that they're able to kind of take that mentality to PSVR and make sure they have things that are staged, major releases that are staged to drop, every 2, 3 months. And like they do with consoles. So we know in January we have Resident Evil 7, and that's a major title, like all platforms considered, that may be the biggest VR title to date. And then we know we have Farpoint. I think they've slated that for something like May, June. So I'm hoping that
there's not a number 3, really. If we really
Correct.
think about it, I mean, everybody thinks about those two, RE7 and then Farpoint. But if you eliminated those two, what's the third biggest PSVR game on the horizon? And I can't honestly point to anything that.
No, we can't, and that's what worries me. We're in a market where games are announced 2-3 years ahead. So, and I get it if they're not, if they want to play cautious, but at the same time, you know, the counter to that is that they can make people a little nervous that you know, there's going to be a significant lull. And you know what, I'm almost okay with that if they can keep a flow of things like Tethered and you know, all these little games that I'm actually getting a lot of enjoyment out of.
You know, but I mean, if we just go back though, let's forget about the future. I know that concern is hovering, and it's almost like this launch has been so nice that you worry about that future, because it's like we got so much right now. It's almost like they put too much into our basket right now. And it's like maybe they should have held some of these things back a little bit. I really feel like this launch is a real high quality launch, because I've been there at all of the launches that we've had recently. You go back to PS4. PS4 has that Killzone game and Knack. Those were like their two big games for launch. Okay. Then you go back to PS3. PS3 had Resistance Fall of Man and like Genji something. I mean, a lot of these console launches are really lackluster, and this is a peripheral, but it's its own beast. It's its own system. I mean, the software is native to it, so it's really almost like a system itself. And I actually have to go back to Xbox 360 in November of 2015. Xbox 360 had Call of Duty 2. It had what was that one game? It was like Criminal Origins or something. It was like beating up bums and stuff, and it was like, you know that one I'm talking about? God, I can't think of the name of it.
I'm drawing short on it.
But anyway, Xbox 360 had the Need for Speed Most Wanted, the very first Need for Speed on the Xbox 360, which was a really fun game. And for some reason, that game is incredibly hard to find, the physical version for that game. It got super rare. But that Xbox 360 launch in November and December, when that came out, was pretty good. And I put this PSVR launch almost up there. The downside to this PSVR launch is that you have to be a gamer that's willing to try a lot of different varieties. And if what you want is like Gears of War in VR, like a third person, like super high end AAA, like we don't have that. You know, we don't have that yet. If you want an incredible Mario 3D game in VR, we don't really have that yet. So if you're into certain genres, you might be a little disappointed with what we have. What we have, you have to kind of just learn to try all these different things and just go with the flow. And I think if you go with the flow, there's so much great software out there. Some of it might not be in the genres that I'm really into, but I'm just kind of going with it.
I think that's important. It's a very important point, because VR changes the way you consume this media. So, you know, I kind of urge people to quit thinking of it and I need my FPS shooter, I need my yearly dose of Call of Duty. While I want those experiences, VR, at least for me, and from what I gather, a lot of people, and you can probably back me up on this, is it changes the way you view certain genres. Like I've enjoyed games in VR that same genre I would not have enjoyed, you know, just playing on PS4 or Xbox One or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, with the arrival of VR, it's like a new format. It's like a new canvas for developers to paint on, and you almost have to throw out what you already know and almost start from scratch when you're in VR. And so it makes sense that if we're almost doing this whole brand new thing, you don't really know what is going to be your genre. We don't really know yet. You know, these are uncharted boundaries, a lot of them. I mean, sure, most of what we got, they're just converting existing games and giving us more immersion with VR. But we do have developers that are trying interesting things, and it's certainly going to be interesting from that standpoint. Okay, let's see. Another PSVR subject I wanted to touch on real quick. Okay, so Steve, I know you have quite a few PSVR games that you have in your digital library, and you're also buying, you probably have bought a couple games physically, and then you've got a couple games coming in through GameFly. And so you've had a taste of a lot of the PSVR software that's out there, but you haven't had a taste of everything. And my question is if every game was the same price and it didn't really matter if it was physical or digital or anything, what would be your three most wanted PSVR games that are currently available that you'd like to have in your collection right now?
Like you said, between GameFly and things I've picked up, I'm pretty well fed. To borrow a comment, I think you said on our last show, we're very well fed right now. So I think there may be only about 3 titles that I haven't had access to. And, you know, and I think price is part of the barrier. Super Hypercube might be my top one. And, you know, the $30 asking price for something so narrow in scope, even though I enjoyed the demo immensely and I could see the potential that it has, the $30 price point is kind of a lot to ask for something that's so narrowly defined.
It's kind of interesting. You know, you mentioned that. I'm just going to say it's kind of interesting we haven't seen a sale for that one, because a lot of, like, Thumper went on a little sale. I think, didn't Rez have a really small sale for a second? And we haven't seen anything on Super Hypercube.
I'm not sure. And you know, and I'm not a big fan of the way Sony does their sales. It's so sporadic. And I guess a lot of it hinges on what they're able to work out with the publishers and developers of said games. But, you know, if it did go on sale, it would probably drop from 30 to $26.99 or something. That's not like a major deal, but that one I'm very interested in. I want to play a lot, but I don't. It's just $30 isn't enticing me, and unfortunately, it's not physical, so I can't try it out on GameFly.
The demo is so good, but you get to that last point where you just slam into that wall, and you're like, man, it sucks as the demo's over.
Yeah. Another one for me, and it's a very similar vein, is Rez. And I know people love it, and I know this. I've heard all the praise for this Area X, which I haven't looked at in any video, so I really have no clue what that is. I try to remain pretty in the dark and try not to watch videos and things like that for if and when I get to experience them myself. So those two are kind of just I very, very interested, but I never felt the impulse to pull the trigger. And the other one, I think, and then I'll eventually get to it for sure, is Wayward Sky. Because of Tethered that I mentioned earlier, you know, the strategy-esque and the God mode, looking down on the tabletop presentation below, looks pretty interested, and so it's a little bit cheaper at $20. So I think I'll get that at some point. Other than that, those would be the 3 that I can come up with right now.
You know, the Wayward Sky guys, they're doing that. What is it called? It's a Dino something.
Dino Frontier, I think.
Yeah. So
yeah, that one looks interesting too, and it looks like they're going to be able to capitalize on that type of presentation where you're kind of in the God perspective, looking over this world, and everything's a little bit smaller. And, you know, it feels like you're playing with a like a train table set type thing.
Yeah, it looks cool. Yeah, so like for me, I'll tell you the 3 games for me, I would probably put Battlezone #1. And you might say, well, hey, you had Battlezone, you had it from GameFly, why did you send it back? But basically, when I had Battlezone, I knew that this is a solid game. It's a great game, you know, and it has great gameplay. I really like it. But I know that it's always going to be there. And it didn't really have like a single player campaign that grabs you in any way, shape, or form. That's kind of the downside of it, is the single player is like it puts you on these different missions, and then eventually when you die, you have to start over from scratch. and it's more of a multiplayer game, which I'm not huge into multiplayer, but I'd screw around with it. But basically, Battlezone, I know that I'm going to get that game again. So I went ahead and sent it back because I do want to try a bunch of other games. And Battlezone's the kind of game that it's almost like you want 2 weeks off and you just want to huddle up with that game and just like really, sometimes you need to do that with a certain game, you know, where you just devote a ton of time to one single game. And when we have these shows, it's kind of important that we dabble in a lot of different games. So there, that plays a little bit of part to it. But Battlezone would be my most wanted of all of them right now. Number 2 for me is, PlayStation VR Worlds. I was hoping to get this one from Gamefly, and they sent me Eagle Flight. And when I got Eagle Flight, I was like, damn, I wanted PlayStation VR Worlds. But Eagle Flight is really good. So it turned out to be a good situation. But I absolutely want to try PlayStation VR Worlds because I haven't done the shark thing. I haven't done any of the London heist stuff. I haven't done any of that. And I thought it would be a lot easier to get a copy of PlayStation VR Worlds for cheap because it's the pack-in, you know, and everybody, I thought people would play it, they get super bored of it, and then it would start hitting eBay, and there'd be so many of them, and people don't really want it because they're getting the bundles. I thought it'd be dirt cheap. I'd get it eventually that way, or I'll get it on Gamefly or something like that. The $39.99 price is a little, if it was $19.99, I'd buy it in a heartbeat. If it was $24.99, I'd be pretty tempted to buy it probably.
Well, you know, with Gamefly, if you go into your, you have to wait till it gets sent to you though. So if it gets sent to you, you can buy it for 26. They basically, so Gamefly, and we're not, they're not an advertiser for us. We're just happen to use their service, but they will, if you have a game in your possession, then you can quote unquote buy it from them. And you know, we think of it as a rental thing, but really what they are is like a online GameStop. They're really a used games selling business. So that's I did get VR Worlds, and that's how I got it. I had a coupon, and they offered a good price, so I think I got it for 21, and that's why with my coupon, and that's why I pulled the trigger on it. So yeah, I think you should get it. And I kind of jumped in there, you know. The one point I did want to make is I think you may see a lot of opportunities to pick it up on the used market after the holidays. It is inherently something good for demo material, and I think a lot of people is kind of holding on to it through the holidays, so they can let grandma
That's true, yeah,
experience the shark and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, grandma and the shark on Christmas. Everybody knows about that one. Yeah, so PlayStation VR Worlds, and then the last one for me is Thumper. And Thumper, I almost bought it. It was on sale, I think, for $15.99 maybe. Just recently, there was a little sale for it temporarily. And I was going to buy it, but I thought, like, when am I going to play this game? Because I got too much other stuff to play. We're both in this situation because not only PSVR, I mean, we have so much goodness with PSVR, but we also have our Vives, and we have games on the Vive. And then there's this Oculus stuff. And so we have a overflowing of games. It's a real changing of the tides, basically, because I remember when I was doing Vivecast episodes in the earlier days of the HTC Vive, and you had to like beg for any little morsel that came down your way. And now we just have this buffet of VR games to work with. So it's been beautiful. But when I saw Thumper on sale, I was like, should I get it, or when am I gonna be able to play it? So I'll just wait. You know, I'll just wait. I'm definitely gonna get these 3 games, no question about it, at some point, but don't know when. Alrighty, so the last topic I wanted to get into before we get into the PSVR games is, as a PSVR owner, as somebody that has bought into the PSVR ecosystem, and you have Move controllers, and you got a camera, and you got games, and you're doing all this, what is your biggest concern as we head into 2017? You talked a little bit earlier about the lull in software. Is that your number one concern, or?
Yeah, for sure. It's there isn't a second close concern. I'm not even sure I could come up with a second concern instead of that one. I don't see them making any radical changes. I don't see them coming out with new tracking controllers. That's really just not their MO. So the big concern is, can this momentum continue? Can they, well, you know what? I guess let me parse that thought a little bit. The production, if going back to how we opened the show, if there is indeed a issue with some components, their OLED screens or whatever, if they can't get that solved, then sure, that would be a legitimate kind of second concern. But even that still is lower than, for sure, than the maintaining this software flow.
Yeah, I mean, the tracking, you mentioned that, and you do see topics every now and then where somebody is like, Sony, just come out with a new camera, come out with a new moves, next Christmas, do it, blah, blah, blah. But you really have to sit down and think about that. Sony is not going to do that. That is, I mean, it's not going to happen. They're not going to dramatically change what they got going. They went with these Move controllers. It's an unfortunate thing. It is holding it back a little bit. The single camera, it's almost cool if they could somehow add a secondary camera so you could kind of put one to the side a little bit, because you know what, one of the problems I have encountered with PSVR from a tracking standpoint is whenever you get your hands up near where your headset is, it does tend to go really crazy. And if you had a secondary camera off to the side that kind of got you from a side angle, that could potentially completely remove that from the equation. But what we have is basically what we're stuck with. This is what we're going to deal with. And I don't think there'll be any major change until PlayStation 5 and PSVR 2. This is what we're going to deal with. Hopefully the algorithms will get better. The firmware will get a little bit better. Maybe we'll know a little bit more about what kind of backgrounds to have and the lighting and stuff like that. But basically the tracking is what it is. My fear is very much like yours, Steve. It's, will there be a second wave of software? How long is it going to take for this second wave of software? Because basically we have, as we've said it a million times, January 24th, we have Resident Evil 7, which is huge. It is absolutely huge. It's the first like 8+ hour VR game on any platform that I really like, a big one, And then we have Farpoint at some unknown time, which is kind of interesting that we didn't get a date for Farpoint yet. So there was this Rolling Stone article or something where a Sony guy mentioned that Farpoint was coming in like late January or something. He made some comment where it made it sound like Farpoint was coming in late January. If that was happening, we would know about that by now, in my opinion. So that's not happening. So February, March, we don't know. And then you do have the Star Trek Bridge Crew thing. And as much as everybody is loving Werewolves Within, maybe the Star Trek Bridge Crew thing will be pretty amazing as well. We'll have to see how that plays out. But there isn't that next couple of games that is like that you can point to. There isn't like, oh, dude, that Uncharted VR experience that's coming out in September is going to be incredible. Tomb Raider VR exclusive coming in November. We don't know about anything about that, and it may happen at E3. We might hear about it at GDC. Who knows? Anything can happen. But yeah, that's my biggest concern, is the software second wave. All right, so that basically covers the state of PSVR right now. And let's get into some PSVR games. The one that we didn't get into last week that I really wanted to get into is Star Wars, Battlefront, X-Wing, Rogue One. I mean, how many different names does this thing have? You got it in your background there. What do you think, Steve? Did this fulfill your childhood dreams?
Yes and no. I'll preface it by saying I'm not a huge Star Wars nerd. I'm very familiar with the the universe. I've seen all the movies many times, with the exception of Episode 7. I've only seen it twice. So it was really cool, but I think they sort of missed the hype. And I hate to say it because I know it's or it's praised everywhere. Mostly, I just I don't know. You're just flying around. Like the beginning, when you boot the game up, and before you hit the X button where it says press X to continue or whatever, you have that AT-AT walking over you. That was probably my favorite part. Like, I thought that was super impressive. The mission, the Rogue One X-Wing, I almost feel like they were shoehorning it a little bit to tie it into the movie. And flying around in the X-Wing was fun, was great. All the little quote unquote Easter eggs where you could push all the buttons on the console, and the old I forget what they call it, but the targeting system, that old school 80s, 70s feeling targeting system thing pops out. All that was really cool, but I feel like they either missed an opportunity to show us the Death Star, show us more AT-ATs, show us one of the well-known settings, Tatooine, whatever. And I think that would have had such a big impact, maybe, closing it out with a, coming face to face with Darth Vader or something. And they didn't do any of that. And I only hope that it's because they're going to make a big Star Wars VR game. Now that would be awesome. It's too plugged into Rogue One. The flying was great. The voiceovers were great.
I thought the voice acting was a little. Did you try switching to because they have an option, like you can be this female pilot, and then before you start the game, you could switch to the male pilot. And I don't know. I thought some of the voice acting was a little bit like this is Star Wars. They should have got a little bit of better voice actors.
Well, maybe, but I guess what I like the fact that there was voice acting that gives presence that we haven't had in a lot of VR games. We talked about it in Arizona Sunshine. If it was a traditional console game, we would probably say, yeah, that voice acting is shit. But compared to how we don't get it in a lot of VR games, that the presence that it gives and the kind of the ambiance that it creates, I kind of liked it. I wasn't being overly critical of the quality of the voice acting itself. So anyways, it's good. It's fun. It's worth the the money spent if you already own Battlefront, and it's worth paying $8, $10, $12, picking this game up used if you don't already have it. So I'm not trying to trash it or anything. I just feel like it's missed opportunities, and I feel like it was overly kind of commercialized and trying to plug into the new movie too much.
Yeah, I mean, the new movie thing, they threw the name on there, and they mention a couple of little things during the sequence where they're probably alluding to something of the new movie. But I don't know, it was just a Star Wars thing. I don't begrudge them so much for that, because it's the timing. I mean, this thing is coming out the exact same time that movie's coming out. They're going to slap the name on there. I'm not surprised by that. My take on it is, well, you start at the beginning and you have your X-Wing fighter sitting there. And I wish that they allowed us to teleport and actually be standing on the ground. Like when I play Resident Evil 7, I'm standing on the ground. I'm in that world. I'm right there. I would have liked to have been able to get really up close to the X-Wing fighter from all different kinds of angles, maybe even get close to one of its wings and duck under it, and stuff like that. But instead, what they do is they have you're basically kind of hovering in the air, and you could switch to these little different camera spots, where you're hovering kind of over your X-Wing, and you get to see it from some different angles, and there's some steam coming out, and you got like that R2 unit or whatever it is that's kind of rolling around and stuff. It's okay. But did you notice that at all as well? Like, did you feel like, why can't I be on the ground right there?
Yeah, yeah, I
Because
noticed it.
Trials
Yeah,
of Tatooine, you're right there on the ground. The R2 is right there. Millennium Falcon is right there.
and I think Trials of Tatooine, it kind of shaped my perception of Rogue One X-wing, because you got to come face to face with R2D2. You got a lightsaber. The Millennium Falcon landed right next to you, and it's for the shorts of that free little teaser experience was it used the more familiar properties of the Star Wars universe, and that I'm repeating myself and I apologize, but that's kind of what got me the most. Is so much more they could have done. They have all this stuff in Battlefront. They have all of those assets right there at their fingertips, and they didn't use them.
You know what's hard about Star Wars? It's the hardest thing about Star Wars is you can always imagine in your head a way better Star Wars than we're ever going to get, whether it's a movie, a TV show, or anything like that, because it's such a great world and your imagination could run with it. And you think of all these different ideas that they could do in Star Wars. And when we get the actual games and stuff, they always kind of fall short because we have such high hopes. I mean, imagine a VR Star Wars game where you're walking down the halls of the Death Star, and it's got the shiny floor and those little things come, that little remote control guy comes swinging by you and there's stormtroopers walking by. And just to be, in the Death Star, think of the scale that they can show with VR. Like you're way up on a second story and you see all these stormtroopers lined up down there and ships coming in and then hovering. And there's a million different things they can do with Star Wars in VR. And I'm sure they're going to do that eventually. This actual experience that we got, I will say though, when you're in the asteroids, when you're in that asteroid field and you're kind of dodging the asteroids a little bit, I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, there's that one scene where this giant asteroid is like, and they do the sound effects, the 3D sound. I was having a sound problem with my PS4 Pro where the sound was always cutting out. And what I did was I went into my settings and I actually just turned off HDCP. There's a box where you check it to enable HDCP. I just turned the whole thing off because my PS4 Pro is 100% dedicated to my headset. I don't even have a TV over there. It's straight headset plugged to a PS4 Pro. I'm not even using a TV, so I don't care about Amazon or any of that crap. And somehow I fixed my audio dropouts by doing this, and I was finally able to enjoy this Star Wars experience with no audio dropouts. And I have to say, there's certain times in that game where you're underneath the Star Destroyer and TIE fighters are like, they're coming all around you. They make it a movie. You get that movie feeling for like a brief 5 seconds in a couple of little spots. I think in the asteroid field, and then with the Star Destroyer, I think there was a couple of moments where it was like the music was ramping up, and the explosions. And they even did something that's kind of interesting. Did you notice that sometimes when you shoot the TIE fighters, they almost have like a special death animation that they go into where they'll do like a cinematic destruction, where they fly by your head and kind of blow up in a very cinematic manner. So I give them a little bit of credit for some of that. But yeah, a lot of it, you look at the backgrounds and it looks like wallpaper. You know what I mean? Like space itself looks like wallpaper. Will we ever get to a day where we have the deepest blacks that we need to actually have a convincing sense of like, I'm moving through space and stars are moving? Will we ever have that? That's going to take a lot of time and a lot of processing.
Well, they did the the hyper jump or whatever they call it when and I thought that effect was pretty cool because you see it in the movies and you see it in other things that aren't Star Wars, but the way the stars kind of turn into lines, going by you to show you that you're traveling at the speed of whatever.
Yeah, right in the middle of that though, they have you like they do the like and you're going like that, and then they have you go through a blue tunnel and then you come out with the lines. And the blue tunnel to me was like, this blue tunnel doesn't look that great. Was it just me?
No. Yeah, it didn't. I didn't think it looked that great either. But I think it was probably a decision to cut back on making people feel sick, or I don't want to say sick, but making them feel disoriented. You know, because these developers are being very sensitive of those kinds of issues. I thought the shooting in general, and my favorite part probably, other than the at the beginning, was probably the Star Destroyer, you know, taking out its turrets and things like that. So the shooting felt good. The effects, like you mentioned, felt good. One thing that bothered me though was the ship felt real slow, and I don't know if they kind of artificially crippled that again for comfort reasons and not wanting to disorient people and make them feel bad. So, but some of this perspective comes from Valkyrie, where it's not as slow, where you can do barrel rolls and a lot more aggressive maneuvers. You know, so it was good, and you know, I liked the experience. I just was a little, you know, if you're going to do a 15-minute flying thing in Star Wars, it could have been the one where you take out the Death Star.
Yeah, that would be sweet. They might be saving it for like a complete. I really hope they do something where it's like a total VR experience. Like you were saying, what about Tatooine? Imagine being on a land speeder. You know, you're on a land speeder with C-3PO right next to you. That'd be kind of cool.
Well, you know how you talk about Batman and how when you're face to face with these well-developed characters and they feel real and they feel like they're standing in front of you. You know, and as iconic as the Joker and the Penguin and all of those characters are, I can only imagine how that will feel if it was Darth Vader and Yoda. You know, like that would be really cool.
If you could do the one Darth Vader scene where it's him and Obi-Wan and he's like, I am the master. You do that scene, that would be sweet. I just want to be down the hallways of the Death Star. I remember back in the 90s, you know how there was the Dark Forces game, but then there was Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight. Did you ever play that game? Oh, it was so good. It was on the computers. It was a short little period of time when I was into like 3D FX chips and stuff. And there was this game called Jedi Knight. It was Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight. And you're kind of like in a Death Star type thing. And there's something about the hallways and just the way they make Star Wars look. It's just so cool. Okay, so for a second there, you actually mentioned Valkyrie. And I actually wanted to ask you a little bit about Valkyrie because there has been a pro patch that has come out for that. And some people have said it's pretty cool. Have you tried it out? What do you think of the pro patch?
I think it's one of the better in terms of graphical fidelity and anti-aliasing, or I don't know if they enabled anti-aliasing or if they just got the resolution up to more of a native. But it makes the game. So the game, you know, I thought the game always looked pretty good. But there, you know, you looked at things off in the distance. There were some pretty noticeable jaggies. The pro patch made that a lot better. Just the overall resolution and jaggy element of it is better. But they also gave another map, which I didn't like the map as much. But what I think they were going for with it has this big ship kind of running through the middle, and you can kind of weave in and out of it. And I think what they were going for was they wanted to cut down on a lot of the looping dogfights that are inevitable in the game. So when you're playing even single player against a computer, you get a lock on somebody and they become your target. You have a tendency to turn and loop, and then you're constantly chasing them and you're just kind of running in circles. So I think this new map was an attempt to kind of break that up a little bit and vary the gameplay, and I guess it did pretty well. You know, the game as a whole still kind of misses something with me, which is bizarre because it's very, very polished. Like I can't put my pulse, I can't put my finger on what it is that just isn't sucking me in and making me spend more time with it. Something's just not right for me, but it's fun. Like it's fun for me in small bursts. Like, you know, I go in, play a couple matches, maybe spend 20-25 minutes, and I've kind of had my fill, and you know, and I won't touch it for 3 or 4 more days. So you know, speaking of the Pro patch itself, big win. I think one of the better ones. It's not as good as Riggs, but maybe it's not as good as Robots Rescue, but maybe the 3rd best Pro patch. Caveat being, I did not see Robinson not on the Pro.
Yeah, I kind of miss Eve Valkyrie a little bit. That was one that I got GameFly. The first GameFly I got was Eve Valkyrie and Battlezone, and I actually sent Eve Valkyrie back first. But I did have a lot of fun when I was playing it. But it's kind of one of those games where if it eventually ends up in a bargain bin at some point, that's probably when I'm going to jump on it, unless I get desperate when we get into those lean months that nothing's really happening. Okay, let's see here. Another game we can talk about a little bit is the Resident Evil 7 demo. I know we already talked about this in one of the previous episodes that we did, but both you and I, we were both in a situation where we were getting the bad ending and we weren't really seeing much more of the game, but you've played it a little bit more and you've discovered a little bit more. Why don't we go ahead and say that right now for this discussion, we are going to go ahead and issue a spoiler warning if you don't want anything spoiled for this demo. This is only the beginning of the game, and we're not even 100% sure this is going to be in the full game or if this is like a separate thing or what. So I don't know that it's the biggest spoiler in the world, but let's just say for the next 7 or 8 minutes, spoiler warning. And so I don't know if you're like me, but did you just get caught at a certain point where it seemed like you didn't know where the hell to go and what to do? How did you finally get out of that?
I had to look up. I think my PS4 went to sleep. I had to look up what to do, and I was trying to be very careful so that I didn't get anything spoiled for me too bad, but I also didn't want to be a person that's just constantly, you know, relaunching the game trying to figure something out. So, you know, I don't know who figured it out, but basically in the very beginning, the room that you begin with is a room that you come back to after you get the VHS tape and pop it into the VCR. And in the VHS playback, you find that there's a secret button in the chimney that activates a secret door. As soon as you start the demo, you can go ahead and activate that switch. And when you go into that secret room, the fuse for the fuse panel that's right on across the wall from when you start is in there. And by getting that fuse, it powers the button that is upstairs in the attic. And then when you press that button, or in the second floor, and then when you press that button, it activates a set of stairs that gives you access to the attic. And when you get up there in the attic, you get the basement key. And the basement key lets you get in the door that you would have come across had you not gone up to the attic, and it just lets you open that door. When you go down in the basement, there's a few more items that kind of keep things moving. You know, things that you will come across that you can't quite activate. Like in the bathroom, you can't turn the water off, so you get a water valve.
Hey, quick question. So when you were playing it and getting the bad endings, what was actually happening? Were you getting that guy that punches you in the face and says, "Welcome to the family"?
Yeah, I got that one time. I've only actually completed it to ending one time. All the other times I've attempted to play it, it has been I've died. So, you know, in the vein of spoilers, when you get down to the basement, there is a bad guy, an enemy, and he can kill you, and you can get a game over, ending your demo right there before you get any ending at all.
Yeah, so I got to that bad guy, and it scared the crap out of me, boy.
Yeah, that was really impressive. So, did you try to go back out the door after you see the bad guy? The way you come in and you find that one of the family members blocks you in.
Oh no, I didn't see that part. I
Oops.
had an axe with me and I was trying to axe the thing. Did you get the axe?
No, I haven't gotten the axe.
There's okay, so you know when you're going through the house, we're still in spoilers, everybody. You know when you're going through the house and you're in the kitchen, there's those two drawers over there, and one of the drawers has a lock on it, but there's one point where you're up in some room or you're in a basement or something, but you get a lock pick. You find a lock pick somewhere. And here's the key to the key to this demo, in my opinion, is when you find a key ingredient like a lock pick or like a key to a gate or something like that. Sometimes you want to turn around and immediately go to that thing rather than to continue on to this wherever you're going, because then you end up dying and you didn't get to where you were supposed to go. But if you have that lock pick, you go back to the kitchen and you can pick the lock on that extra little drawer there, and you get, I was hoping the gun was in there, man. I had 3 packs of ammo, but I don't have a gun. Did you ever get the gun?
So yeah, if you go to the
No, it's
basement,
okay. Don't tell me. Don't tell me.
okay,
I'll figure it. I just didn't know if there even is a gun.
no, there's definitely a gun, and you
Okay.
can shoot it. I think this demo is really cool, and Capcom has a way, and they kind of do the same things with the Street Fighters and stuff. You know, they have a way of creating replayability for the hardcore that want to master and find every nook and cranny. And they've done that with this Resident Evil demo. And again, like you say, we don't know if it's really the first hour of the game or if it's even any part of the game itself. But there is like so many secrets to uncover. This demo is very, very deep, and I've read some of it and I've tried to avoid more of it. But there's apparently there's a really hard ending to achieve that isn't so much combat oriented, but you got to find things in the right order, or else certain things won't unlock. And it deals with the mannequin finger that you find. You basically have to point it at certain things in the environment in the right order, in the right way. And that notepad that you find, secrets start appearing on that notepad. And
God damn, man. I'm not good at this stuff.
no, and I think it's one of those kind of like it's kind of like you know, deep internet lore, like I don't know, like the deep web or something. No one person can find it. Like they didn't make it in such a way expecting one person to be able to solve this. They expected message boards to discuss and for the community as a whole to figure it out. And that's what I gather has happened. I don't think it's possible for one person to have discovered all this stuff. Which makes it really cool, because you know they're able to take this one snippet of the game and stretch it out and get people so hyped over it and so deeply involved with it. Even though I'm personally not going to go back and do that, I have a lot of appreciation for it.
The thing that I wonder about though is when you put me in a game, I want to find things and feel like I have some way of solving it by using my brain and stuff, and not. I remember back to the PT demo, and it's like, you got to go over here, you got to lift this phone up, you got to then walk back over it. I mean, who's going to figure out that you have to look at this painting and turn and look at this painting? I want you to give me something where, okay, there's a puzzle and I got to figure it out. You know, like that one game that we played where you're trapped in a room and you end up getting a screwdriver, and then you open that thing and you know you find something, you use your brains to figure it out. And just having something so abstract where it's like, okay, I got to take out this little pinky from a doll and I got to figure out I'm supposed to point it at this thing, that thing, this thing, that thing.
That's why I don't think that's what's in the real game, or if it is, it's for the people that want to get the platinum trophy and things like that. I don't think you're going to have to advance it. So you know, from this demo, you can obviously get the bad ending. I think you can get a good ending, basically, if you beat the bad guy and get out. But then there's I think they call it the true ending, And that's if you escape, you never even really run into the bad guy, and you don't go out a door. If you saw that attic, the window up in the attic, you
Yeah,
go out
yeah.
that way. So it's you really have to go through all of that abstract community collective solved solution to get that ending. And maybe they'll have things like that in the final game, but I think the bulk of what you'll experience, if you're not wanting to go that deep, is you'll be able to solve your own puzzles. You'll eventually figure out how to advance the game.
The crazy thing about playing that demo is you'll be in there and you'll be in a particular room and you'll swear like, man, I've searched every square inch of this room. Where is the next little secret? What do I need to do? And it's like there's no way. I've looked in everything. I've been in every room 2 different times, 3 different times. And it's just one of those things. I actually had to ask you for a hint because I was stuck and I wasn't getting anywhere. And you mentioned the thing about, at the very beginning, just going to that secret entrance right away. And I had actually thought of that when I was in the game, but then I thought, no, there's no way that will be the answer because nobody would know to do that unless they saw the videotape and blah, 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 blah. And of course, no, I guess not. So it's like, is this like New Game Plus where you have to, it's almost like a roguelike. Are you going to just have to die and learn from your deaths? And
yeah, I mean, you wouldn't have had that thought had you not played through it once already, gotten the VHS tape, saw that switch was there. And yeah, I think they designed it so that everybody gets the bad ending on the first playthrough. I'm not sure that there's any reasonable other outcome that you can get on playthrough number 1. And let's say that's the only playthrough that you do. You do it that one time, you put it down, you never pick it up again. I think the demo is successful, particularly for VR, because it gives you a feel for how this game is going to be. Like that first night I played it and I didn't go back to it, I still felt good getting the bad ending. I still thought it was very impressive.
yeah, okay, so let's move on. And one game that we haven't mentioned, well, I think we mentioned very briefly, but we never really got into it, is Carnival Games on PSVR. Now, this game was on sale a while back where it was like 10 or 11 bucks or something. I picked it up, you picked it up, and you've played it a long time ago and you were playing it with your kids and stuff. And I was going to play it, never got around to playing it, but I finally played it recently. And we haven't really talked about this game. I'll just say that with me playing it, I was pleasantly surprised. Maybe it was because my expectations were so incredibly low, because I know it came out on the Vive as well, and people tried it on the Vive and they didn't think it was that good. And I think I heard a lot of the early PSVR feel was just kind of so. But when I tried the game, I was playing Milk Toss, where you're throwing this like lead ball, or you're throwing, I guess, a regular baseball, and then you have like these lead milk things, and you have a gold one, and you're trying to get the maximum points possible. And when I was playing that, I was really getting into it. The tracking was really good. I didn't have any problem as long as I made sure not to put my hands too much up in my face and kind of keep it more to the side. And I was firing in fastballs, and I kind of figured out where to let my hand go to like release the baseball, and scoring a lot of points. And the thing that I liked most about this, Steve, was when the game was over, when that little mini game was over, I could restart almost instantly, and I was right back in there, boom, throwing the baseball. And then one other little point I want to make, and I'm going to turn it over to you, but one other point I want to make is there's this cartoon guy that's standing there that's telling you, like, every time you throw the ball, he's like, that wasn't a very good shot, or, and you make a really good shot and he's like, oh, I've seen some great stuff today. And he's looking at you. It's a crappy cartoon character. There's nothing special about it in any way, shape, or form, but it's a voice from a thing that is occupying space, and it looks at you, and that adds a little bit of something to it. But what I really love though is boom, boom, boom. You could do it over and over again. And in so many VR games, there's all this loading and stuff. And it's nice to be able to just like arcade, like bam, 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 bam. Okay, turn it over to you, Steve.
I'm glad you liked it. Shout out to Lucky's Tale. I'm going to outlay this game a little bit, so if you haven't played it, for people who haven't played it, understand what it is. It's just a collection of simple carnival type games, and you know, I think there's maybe 11, 12 of them, something in that range, and you basically you teleport, for lack of a better word. It's more like Ms. style, just kind of pointing and clicking to where you want to go, except you do it with a move controller. And there are you just play a game and you get tickets like you would at a carnival. So, you know, if you're playing the milk toss game that Anthony described, you might get 5 tickets, you might get 10 tickets, depending on how well you do. And then you use those tickets to buy prizes, and then those prizes unlock additional games. And then it doesn't take very long to get them all unlocked. And then once you do that, you can get you know, you can get a 1-star rating, 2-star rating, 3-star rating. And there's leaderboards for all the individual games and things like that. So it's very simple, and there's kind of beauty in its simplicity, that it's easy to pick it up and play. And if you like one of the specific games, you can, you know, you could spend a half hour easily on just one of the little games trying to you know, beat someone's score. So I don't know if I'm not going to go through every one of the games. I'll go through some of my favorite ones. The one Anthony mentioned is fun. You know, you can go a pretty long run on that if you're you have decent aim. For me, I had to combat some tracking issues. Like, no, I don't know if it's tracking. I don't want to say tracking issues, but for whatever reasons, the angle in which I was trying to throw the ball, it just wasn't right for me. And I tried various angles. That being said, I'm also pretty short distance to my camera, where I have it set up here in my theater room. But my favorite game is probably there's a game where you are catching funnel cakes that are being shot out of a cannon or something like that, and you hold the 2 move controllers kind of out, like it looks more like you're catching pizzas if you see a video of it, but you're holding them out like this, and you're trying to catch them, and you get a multiplier for each one that stacks up. And if it's using kind of ragdoll-ish type physics, and if 3 of them fall off, then your multiplier drops by 3. And I think I got it up to like between the 2 plates, I got it up to like 23, 24x multiplier. And then I thought that one was really fun. My son, he really likes, there's one where it's a climbing adventure, and I think they probably borrowed design elements from Crytek's The Climb and Robinson. And you use the move controllers and the triggers, and you're just climbing through this obstacle course. And you know, it can, if you're the type of person that has vertigo or any kind of heights issue, you know, you kind of invoke that feeling a little bit. What all of the mini games did you get to try?
Well, I tried the milk toss, of course. I think that's the first one you start out with. And then there's the shooting gallery, which is okay. You're like shooting dynamite and stuff. Different things pop up and you shoot it. That one I wasn't too in love with. It was okay. The one where you're rolling the ball, skee ball or whatever it's called, you know, you roll the ball and you try to get it to land in the 100.1 or the 50.1. That one was cool. The only downside I'll say on that one is I tried to almost get, you know, like I'm playing the Nintendo Wii or something, you know, I really tried to get into it and like really pretend that the ball was in my hand and this thing is there. And sometimes when I tried to do that, the camera, I maybe got a tiny little bit of wobble where I was looking at the thing that I'm rolling it on and it kind of moved a little bit. and that was a little weird, but I like, that's one of my favorite little games, that one and the milk toss one.
Did you get to the haunted, the little haunted house shooting thing? It's kind of like a kitty-fied Rush of Blood.
No, I don't think I got to that one yet. I kind of have barely scratched the surface on this. I haven't played it that much, but what I did notice is it just has that quick gameplay that, you know, you can get right into it, and this isn't going to win any awards, I don't think, for anything, but if you want some quick arcade action and it's using your Move controllers, it was kind of weird when I first got in the game. I'm like, okay, how do I move? You know, I'm in this little Disneyland, like kind of a Disneyland-ish type place, and I'm like, okay, how do I move? And then I'm like, wait, I can't teleport. There's no, what am I doing here? And then you realize, like you said, you basically have to point at these different things, and then they kind of highlight with their color, and like a little circular thing shows up. You hit your move button, or is it the trigger or the move? I can't remember which one, but you hit one of them, and then it takes you there. And one cool thing is about the world that they have is, like, when you're playing milk toss and you're standing there and you're tossing the ball, you can turn around and look behind you, and there's other people out there walking around, and they're going to different little attractions, and there's people that are standing next to you on some other thing, and they're the same height as you, and they're right there. And just little touches like that are kind of cool. Again, not the greatest game in the world, but what, it was like $11 or something. So for that amount of money, I didn't think it was too bad.
It was $10, and they had the same price on the Vive as well, or on Steam for $10. And I don't know if it ever, I guess it wouldn't have been out for Oculus because it was prior to the touch controllers coming out. For $10, I think it was like zero regrets. So I think even if I don't play it again, my kids will get use out of it. And I think it can be for PSVR only owners, it can kind of fit into some of that grandma, you know, over for Christmas holiday demo stuff for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm going to let my younger son try it. He might actually, because they go to those places where you do every once in a while, they'll go to like a soccer thing or something, and then they end up at one of these like bowling alleys, but it also has like all the little redemption games, and you get all the tickets, and, you know, the whole gambling training basically program that they have for kids you go to a modern day arcade, it's not an arcade, it's all the ticket redemption stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And but I think he would like doing the skee ball and stuff like that. He'd probably like that.
Yeah.
All right. So Steve, I didn't know if you want to chop it off here, or is there some other games you want to get into real quick? Or
no, I got a couple more. I don't think you had a chance to play, and we can go ahead and kind of cross them off so that we've kind of thrown them out there in the ethos.
Yeah.
Super Stardust VR. And man, I'm going to sound like negative Nancy on this episode, but so Super Stardust VR is a game. It was one of Sony's first arcade type cheap digital store titles, and I'm pretty sure it was Housemarque that did it. It's a very, very good game. It came out on PS3 back in, like, I don't know, 07, 08, something like that. And they re-released it on
Wait, one sec. Did you ever play the 3D version on PS3 with 3D glasses?
I did it on either PS3 or PS4, yes.
That was freaking awesome. Oh my God, dude. I had a 3D TV for a very brief period of time. I had this Samsung Plasma that happened to be 3D capable, and I had a PlayStation 3, and I had Super Stardust, and they had a 3D version of it, and it's like you're seeing all the little things, and it was like the particle explosions and stuff. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was, for me, if it was PS3 or PS4, because I'm pretty sure it's on both of them. It's a very good direct port. So the game itself, you know, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it because it's been around for about a decade now, and it's a quality little twin stick shooter, super polished. You know, Housemarque is they're on point when they make these kinds of games. The VR add-on, so I had the base game already, so I got to do the VR add-on for just that price, which was $10, and it unlocks the base game in VR mode, and it's very comparable to the 3D mode, but as you can imagine, much better. So the planet is that you're hovering around is just kind of floating in space in front of you, but they filled out all the area around the planet using similar art style to what you see in the base game, and they just filled it around you in a full 360, and you can just look everywhere, and you see space, and you see space type effects.
And this is not amazing.
It is. I'm gonna get to my point. So
Okay.
It would be amazing if you had never played the game. For me, I played the game for a while, but I put so much time in it in the past, like it's kind of, it had to been there, done that, even though it was in VR, and it is the best way to experience Super Stardust without question. It felt like I'd been there and done that, and that's because I've kind of played it twice, when it came out on PS3, and then again when they re-released it on PS4. But what also comes with VR mode, and this is the point that I'm more negative on, they created a for lack of a better way to describe it, a battle zone sort of equivalent, where you're in a tank-ish type thing, and it's a full 3D presentation, and you're shooting some of the same types of creatures that are in the base game, and it plays well. It's not broken. It's just it's not very fun.
Did you get any nausea from it?
I did not know, and I don't remember if there were any comfort settings or not. There none that I recall, so there probably weren't any comfort settings. It wasn't bad. It wasn't remarkable. It was very bland, and it almost felt like it was their way of just something that they kind of had fabbed up in the at the developer to kind of just learn VR and whatnot, and they made it a game.
I doubt Housemarque actually had anything to do with this whatsoever, but that probably
that is very much also a possibility. So
I'd love to see what they would bring to VR, the real guys, but I mean, I know the base game was already there, so they just had to turn it into VR. But I'd
imagine they are bringing something to VR, because Sony, they, like when the PS4 came out, you had Resogun, and they've had the kind of top down zombie type shooter game. I forgot what it's called right now. Dead Nation, maybe something like that. And all of their games are really fun, and Sony seems to leverage them in key like hardware launch moments. And I have to think they're doing something in VR too, and I look very forward to it. So go ahead. You were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, though, if there is somebody out there that never played Super Stardust and they can jump in on this for $20, forget the cheapo Battlezone ripoff that they added onto it to try to make it seem like it's really a VR special deal. Just that base game, what would you say for somebody that's never ever played it that might feel like, because damn, that is a good twin stick shooter. I played it myself too, but I never saw every single planet, but I did see the first couple of them. I don't think I completely finished it, but I've been tempted because I hear somebody like you talk about that, hey, if you liked it in 3D, well, this is even better. And I really liked it in 3D.
It is much better. It is the definitive, they like to call the definitive edition of every re-release game out there. This is the definitive edition of Super Stardust of Super Stardust. I almost added the VR to it. So yeah, I recommend if you've never played the game, it's a very good, if you like arcadey twin stick shooters, there's no narrative to it. This is purely the joy of the gameplay mechanics. So
do you see your controller?
No.
Okay. So you're just completely
sure
invisible, but you see the world there?
Yeah. And it's just in your face. And I know there have been titles that have done a similar kind of thing in terms of presentation on the Vive, and not the same kind of gameplay, but yeah, you're almost non-existent. You're just an omnipresent observer.
Do you know if it's PS4 Pro enhanced at all?
I do not. It looked good. I mean, the base game came out on PS3, so I'd imagine they're able to, if they have a promo, that they're able to super sample the hell out of it.
All right. Yeah, sounds pretty. I mean, obviously, if you already have it, don't bother. But if you never have it before, maybe take a look at it.
Yeah, and then the other one, Hyper Void, which was the PlayStation Plus game. I'd never played it, so on PlayStation Plus they gave this away. However, it is not a PS4 release. It is so when Sony does the PlayStation Plus every month, the first Tuesday of the month, I believe, they do 2 PS4 games, 2 PS3 games, and I think maybe 2 Vita games, 1 or 2 Vita games. And so Hyper Void is a PS3 game. It falls in that. So if you have PS Plus, if you go to download this on your PS4, it won't be there. So what you have to do is either download it on PS3 if you have one. It's a I should add that it is a what they call a cross-platform game. So when you get it, if you download it in any fashion, you'll get it for PS3, PS4, and maybe even on Vita. So I don't have a PS3 anymore. So how I got it was I just went to the web store online in a browser and added the game, and could download it to your PS4. So I think it's really bonkers how they don't let you download a quote unquote PS3 game, even though it has cross-play support. Or at least I couldn't find a way to do it. It wasn't in the PS Plus listings. Maybe if you went to the game, search for it in the store, maybe you could get it that way directly on the PS4. But either way, if you have PS Plus, make sure you pick it up. It is a quote unquote PS3 release. And then in the VR section of the store, you can do the VR add-on for free. And I never played the base game, and this isn't super great or anything, but for the low asking price of $0.00, it's worth giving a run through once. It is also a spaceship shooter. It's not twin stick. The best way I can describe it, kind of initially for the VR people out there, is if you can imagine Thumper and the kind of feel that it has, and instead of being limited to a skinny track, imagine being limited to one that is about as wide as your field of view, maybe a little bit more narrow, and then the enemies are coming from out the middle of the screen, and this is a shooter. You kind of slide back and forth on that plane, and you have a few little different types of shots that you can fire. One that's more of a concentrated type laser, one that's more of a wider shot and a little bit lower powered. It's very similar to actually in Super Stardust, how you have the 3 different modes. You have the Rock Crusher, the Gold Melter, and the Ice Blaster, or whatever they call it. So this game has something similar, but it's instead of being a top down, it's a more of a isometric type view. So it was fun. I played through it. I didn't beat it or anything. I've spent maybe 20-25 minutes, and I doubt I'll play it again, but I knew we had talked about it. I know you don't have PS Plus, so I wanted to just kind of at least cover it while we're doing this PSVR episode, because it's worth giving that half hour or so too, because it's free.
I've seen some screenshots of it, and it looked like the kind of game that I would actually like screwing around with. There's a few games that are on the Vive that are kind of like that, where it's almost like taking an old school shooter and you're like inside the shooter, and there's like little asteroids and stuff, and you're kind of like in the game, and it's kind of coming at you almost down like a pathway. That's kind of what it looks like to me when I've seen the screenshots. Mm-hmm. But it looks like something I would like to screw around with. But yeah, Plus for me, I'm waiting for there to actually be a schedule of PSVR games that are being given away or something like that for me to jump on Plus, or if there was like some crazy sale to get a 1 year Plus membership, like $29.99 or something, I'd probably buy a card for it. But I'm not much of a multiplayer guy, so PS Plus doesn't really do much for me. But yeah, I saw that was free, and it does look kind of cool.
Yep, it's worth checking out. And the only other game that I kind of had on my list to talk about. I think I'm going to hold it because you said that you still want to try to get VR worlds. So the one I was going to talk about was Scavenger's Odyssey. It's one of the 5, kind of, I don't want to say mini games, but one of the 5 games that are on there. And it didn't get a lot of coverage. And, so it pleasantly surprised me. I was going into it not expecting a lot, and it pleasantly surprised me. I like Carnival Games, it's not going to set the world on fire. It's not going to win any awards, but it's something I think we could talk about when you get a chance to play it.
Okay, and just before we get out of here, I just wanted to say real quick, I've been playing Eagle Flight, more of Eagle Flight, and that game is impressive. There's certain little things about it that it is a flying game and you're an eagle. And so there's sometimes you might not want to play a game where you're an eagle, but when I'm playing it and you're like going through these, tunnels and stuff, and it has the music, and the musical score is almost like it gains momentum, like while you're swooping around and stuff. And it just gives you that extra something. I give them a lot of love, and there's so many little things they do where they give you this map and they give you all these different objectives to do. And a lot of the objectives are like, okay, you're flying through hoops, and then it's like save this little eagle or guide this eagle along. But I'm sure a lot of them kind of repeat and they're all kind of similar, but they keep you moving along, and then eventually it's raining and everything's raining and it's got a different look to it. I got to that part of the story. I'm just doing the little single player story, A Bird's Life or whatever they call it. And I got to a part where it's raining and stuff, and I'm doing the different challenges, and you're just flying around. You can just do that free roam, and that's fun, man. Just floating around the city and getting the feathers. I love collecting little things sometimes, like, on the first Assassin's Creed, when they had all those flags everywhere on top of buildings and stuff, you'd find those little flags. And so it's like finding these feathers. So I'm looking all over, finding the damn feathers. And then also the fish, like you can hit the fish and collect all the fish.
On that point on Assassin's Creed, and I don't know if it's just me or if it's the connection to Ubisoft. Do you know how that's said, by the way? The Paris felt like Assassin's Creed, even though it was more cartoony. I felt like I was playing. I don't feel like I was playing Assassin's Creed because you're flying like an eagle in VR, but it had a sort of an ambiance of Assassin's Creed. Did you feel that at all, or am I just crazy?
No, it had. Yeah, I think there is a little bit of that. The city itself, it looked like you'd be climbing up on all these different things and stuff like that. But I liked it when you're just swooping around and you see these zebras come running along right below you, and you're seeing the bears, and just, I think it's a cool game. I just didn't want to sell that game short. It's actually worth $39.99. I think it's in a crowded market, and there's a lot of other stuff to play. But I think that game is the perfect illustration of what we were saying before, where this launch lineup that PSVR has is it's got so much breadth to it. You know what I mean? Breadth with a DTH or whatever at the end of it. It's got a lot of variety. And if you're open to it, you got to be open to it. If you're dude bro and all you want is Titanfall 2 in VR and it's not here yet, or you want, Assassin's Creed in VR or Tomb Raider in VR, or you want Call of Duty in VR and it's not here and you're pissed, I could see it kind of sucking. But if you're able to be like, oh yeah, let me try this Thumper thing. This is different. Let me try this. Let me try Bound. This is really different. Let me try this. If you're willing to try these things, Eagle Flight, Robinson, Battlezone, Eve, all the different games that we got, I really think PSVR has a great launch lineup. And people might need to complain in future months when things go dry, but really no one should really be complaining right now, in my opinion.
Nope. And I feel the same way. And I wonder how much of that is circumstance and how much of that is Sony's wisdom, because they launch this and they know not everything is going to appeal, based on traditional gaming habits. And they have this lineup where are so many different experiences, and that's very different than what I experienced with the Vive. And I got the Vive late. You know, you got it at launch. I didn't get mine till early summer or something like that. And you know, so there were titles that I had available to me day one that you didn't have. And I just feel that even though, you know, there's so many like amateur indie developed things on the Vive, that Sony was able to, with less quantity of titles available technically, that they were able to present a more diverse lineup. Like,
and the production quality, you know, that's where Sony really has it over the Vive. Like if you really were going to make that head-to-head comparison, it's just so many of the PSVR games are oozing with the professional production quality that comes with higher budgets, bigger teams. And we only have a handful of those on the Vive, and that's why they're so special. That's why Arizona Sunshine, a game that we were kind of raving about last week from the game part of it, that's why that kind of a game is so special on the Vive, because we rarely do get voiceover work and story and things like that on the Vive. It's mostly a lot of experimentation, a lot of great games, but not necessarily those production values. And you look all across the PSVR library, and there's production values all across. Eagle Flight is a really good example of that. Great production value. I think it takes a good game, but I think the production value really makes it a much better game. You know.
No, I agree with you, and that's why, you know, when we were texting about it, and I was like, "Hey, man, I just got Eagle Flight," and then you got it, and you're like, "I don't know," like, I'm glad it kind of circled back and caught up with you a little bit, because it's you know, it was a sleeper hit.
Yeah, it's one thing I've noticed is it's a good idea to, even if you don't like a game that first time you try it, maybe come back and play it again. Because I've noticed this, you know, Drive Club, Eagle Flight. I've had certain games where I've got like, I just kind of got a little nauseated feeling or whatever, and I came back and did it again, and everything was great. And so maybe if you have a game like that, maybe give it another try and see if it's still the same way for you. All right, well, this was just a little bonus episode that we wanted to throw out there for the people out there, because we are struggling a little bit with getting everybody together and having times when we can record. And so we thought we could throw this bonus episode out there, a PSVR specific episode. And that's basically what you have for that. So once again, thanks everybody for tuning in. Steve, I want to thank you for joining me for this. And once again, to everybody listening, if you could leave a comment on the YouTube page, or maybe leave a review for us on iTunes, that is absolutely appreciated. We do have our email, of course, vrroundtable@gmail.com, if you have any questions or concerns. And that's basically going to do it for us for this bonus episode. So take it easy. Later, Steve.
Later, Anthony.
All righty.